right, so what we're going to do with this video is something quite ambitious because what I'm going to do is take you through a full demonstration of our new skills application. Skills by Pipe9, that's what we call it. And it's a skills application that we've built for Microsoft Teams, works in Microsoft Teams. And I'm going to give you a full soup to nuts demonstration of the application. So buckle up. Get ready. We're going to go through all of the capabilities that we've built into this amazing skills application for Microsoft Teams. Now, the background to this is that over the last couple of years, we've been doing a lot of projects, especially with companies like Microsoft, in the area of role excellence. Role excellence. Microsoft refer to it as role excellence. And it's all about defining what excellence in role looks like. And Microsoft have many, many roles across their sales, their marketing, their partner, their customer, their service, many, many roles. And what they do is they define for every role what excellence in role looks like. What are the skills that drive excellence in role? What is the North Star view of what excellence in role looks like? And we spend a lot of our time working with Microsoft and actually across their ecosystem of partners to help them define role excellence. And as we were doing this, as we were starting to define these excellence profiles for these roles, we started to understand that on their own, in isolation, these excellence profiles aren't very useful for people because there's not much they can do with them. How do I go and execute against an excellence profile for my role? At the very same time, almost in parallel, Microsoft was going through a culture shift towards something called growth mindset. Really trying to instill within their employees across their organization this notion of growth mindset, building a growth mindset. And so this was kind of a little bit similar, we found, to what we found with role excellence. How do you execute growth mindset as an employee in a company where the company is really trying to go deep with growth mindset? How do you actually go and execute it? And so what we've done is developed an application that enables you to go execute these things. And that's what I'm going to spend a little bit of time taking you through on this video. Now, in terms of growth mindset, there were 3 goals that we had. The first goal was to make it really super easy for people to complete perspectives, my perspective on the work that I'm doing, and really reach out, be open, because being open to getting perspectives from other people is a fundamental part of growth mindset. I would say it's one of the 3 core pillars of growth mindset, being open to receiving perspectives about the work that you're doing from others. And so we wanted to make sure that we provide a simple and easy way for perspective, for people to gain perspective around the work they were doing. That was goal number one. Goal number 2 was around growth goals. Growth goals, in order to have a growth mindset, you have to establish growth goals. And so how do you do that? How do you think about prioritizing growth goals and then kind of managing those growth goals all the way through to, completion? How do you do that? So that was our second goal for the app, to really provide a simple and easy way for employees to manage their growth goals. And then the third thing was around mentoring. We wanted to provide capabilities for people to know when they've reached that point whereby they've mastered something. They've mastered, for example, a skill, and they're ready to then model that skill for others across their organization, to mentor others in their organization. We wanted to provide a way for them to do that, such that individuals could really mentor. And of course, when you aggregate up all that mentoring going on across the organization, it's really accelerating the skills adoption across the whole organization, which is becoming one of the drivers of growth for the company. So these were the 3 goals that we had: perspectives, growth goals, and mentoring, modeling skills that have been mastered for others. These are the 3 goals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into the application. It's in Microsoft Teams. It's a Teams app, so it's kind of in the flow of work, which means you can very, very easily go into Teams. And what you can do is you can go into any channel within Teams, and you can upload the application onto a tab within any one of your channels, which means that the application is right there in the flow of the work that you're doing, in the flow of the teamwork that you're doing. The application is right there. Now, what you're seeing on the screen here is what we refer to as a skills board. This is the skills board for a role called the account executive role. And I'm just going to show you how you would go into the application. Here in the top left-hand part of the screen, you would just literally pull that button down. And when you click on the button, you can access the account executive profile. And that's what I've done here with this particular skills board. It's actually showing me the skills profile for this role of account executive. Now, embedded in what you're seeing on the screen is the excellence profile for this role. This profile is made up of 4 skill areas across the top, or you might think of these as capability or competency areas. And then within each skill area, there are 4 skills. In some cases, there's a 5th skill as well. And so this is our excellence profile, and the way that we are presenting that is in the form of what we refer to as a skills board. A skills board. Now, when you first come into the application, though, it doesn't look like this. When you first come into the application and start using the app, it looks a little bit like this. It's much more vanilla, if you like, in its appearance. Yes, I can see my skills board set up, but I don't see the colors that you were seeing in the first example that I showed you. And what I want to do to start off with is going to take you through how we build these skills boards up, because how we build the skills boards up is really fundamentally important to the way that you use the application, and therefore the benefit you get from the application. And what you actually do is you go up into what we call perspectives. You click on perspectives. And when you get into perspectives, what you can easily do is to click on the, let's say, the top left-hand skill. You could actually click on any skill here. Just click on that skill. And what it enables you to do is to start the process of building your perspective of the work that you're doing against the profile for your role, against the excellence profile for your role. So what I'm doing here is the first thing I'm going to do for this skill is around account planning. I'm going to determine, how important is this particular skill to me in the work that I'm doing. I'm going to say, this is important. What's my frequency? What's my level of frequency associated with me executing this skill? Am I doing it never, sometimes, often, or always? And frequency is always in the context around which you would expect that you would need to be doing this particular skill. In the case of account planning, for example, it would be perhaps once a year, and then every quarter you meet with the account team, you do a deep dive, and you update the account plan. Now, my view of the work that we're doing here is, let's say we're doing it often, our frequency is often, and our proficiency level here associated with account planning is we're at the expert level, Now, what you will notice in the background here is as I go through the process of completing my perspective, you see the colors, these colors start to appear on the tiles in the background. So let me just do another one. Let me click through to the second skill here, importance associated with something called the 3 horizons model. That's important. Frequency is, I've just started out that skill. It's sometimes, my proficiency is pretty basic for now. And you see again in the background, the colors are starting to appear, and I can move through each one of the skills literally like this, going through each one of the skills, completing my perspective on the work that I'm doing. And when I do that, when I complete all of the skills, when I complete my perspective against all of the skills, what happens is that I create something that looks like this, my skills board. Now, colors here tell the story because the colors are meaningful, because we use colors to help us prioritize the skills that we want to focus on over the next period or through the next period. Red skills are those skills that we should stop investing skilling time in. These skills are simply just not important. Maybe these are kind of old skills. These skills are not having the impact that they used to. So let's stop investing time in red skills. Amber skills are new skills. They're rising up. They are skills that are becoming much more important. And I need to start to spend time investing in developing. This would be these skills. Green skills are the skills whereby I should spend most of my skilling time, because the gap between where I am today, based on my perspective, where I am today, and mastering these skills, and these are important and critical skills for me in my role excellence profile, they're important and critical skills. The gap between where I am today and mastering these skills is at its greatest. It's at its greatest. And therefore, these are the skills that I want to spend most of my skilling time on, the green skills. And then there's the violet skills. These are skills whereby I've nearly become a master in these skills. I've nearly mastered these skills. There's still this final push that I need to put in, this final push in order to get to the finish line. It's a sprint to the finish line such that I can master this skill. And when you master skills, these skills on the skills board go purple. They go purple. Purple means that you have mastered a skill. You've crossed that finishing line. You've become a champion of that skill. You've done your fastest lap and you are master of that skill. But don't rest on your laurels here. We're not resting on our laurels here. No. What we're actually doing is then modeling these skills for others. We transition into a mentoring type role whereby we really are investing time modeling these skills for others. And just think about that for a second. We can get everybody across the organization who's mastered a skill, that they've gone purple with a skill, that then is investing time back into mentoring those skills that they've mastered for others who, for them, the skill is an amber skill, they're just starting up, or it's a green skill, they really need to start accelerating forward with the skill. We get everyone doing that, then we can have a massive impact on the development, on the growth of the overall company, And so the colors tell the story here. Colors tell the story. People ask me, well, what percentage of my time should I invest in each one of these colors, Alan? And I would say, obviously, red is 0. Stop investing time in red skills, because they're not going to give you the payback anymore that perhaps in the past they did. Amber skills, 20% of your time. Invest 20% of your skilling time in amber skills. Green skills, 40%. This is where most of your time should be spent. Most of your skilling time should be spent on these green skills, 40% of your time. 20% on violet skills. It's that final sprint to the finishing line. And actually that final sprint can have big payback. If you cross over that line, you become a master of that skill. And then when you do go purple, you do master the skills. 20% of your skilling time should be spent on modeling these skills for others. And perhaps over time, as more of these skills, think about it for a second, as more of these skills, as you move up from reds into ambers, ambers into greens, greens into violet, violets, purple, as more of your board starts to go purple, you become more experienced, you become more expert, you've mastered more skills in the role. And then what you're doing is investing more of your time in modeling these skills for others. And this is a way that you can start to manage that journey towards mastery and manage the journey towards really where you want your masters to be, in a position whereby they're modeling these skills that they've mastered for others, other employees across the company. Now, okay, let me take a step back here, because what I wanted to show you here is another perspective. I want to show you another perspective, because this is the perspective of the account executive. Let's call this account executive Violet Smith. Violet Smith is our account executive in this particular example. And Violet works for a manager called George Beck. George Beck is Violet's manager. Now, what I can do here is I can show you the very same perspective that George has. This is now George's perspective. You see here, if I pull down this arrow here, I see that George has got 3 or 4 direct reports: Violet, Klaus, Christopher, and John. This is his perspective of the work that Violet is doing against these skills for her role, these skills that make up the excellence profile for her. This is her boss's perspective. Now, the way that George created his view of Violet's, his perspective of Violet, was in exactly the same way. He went into perspectives, he goes into perspectives in exactly the same way that Violet did at the account executive level. Now we're at George's manager level. George is going into perspectives. And when we get into perspectives, what you're going to see is a unique way for George as the manager to go through and complete his perspective, not just on Violet, his one of the account executives in his team, but all of the members actually of his team. And we're going to show you that here. So, for example, I can click on a skill, and you can see when I click on this skill, we have a very similar dialog box that comes up. But what's different about this dialog box is that you can see all of the members of George's team, Violet, Klaus, and Christopher. And what George can simply do for each one of these skills, for each member of his team, is he can go through and he can consider for each skill which one's important, what are the frequency levels, what are the proficiency levels for each member of his team. And he can literally move through and do this for each of the skills that make up the excellence profile for his team. Now, the other thing that George can do here, because this isn't just about providing perspectives, we wanted to support this whole notion of connector managers. If you read the Gartner research around connector managers triple the likelihood that their directs become top performers. Connector managers triple the likelihood that their direct reports become top performers. Now, how do connector managers do that? Well, they connect their people. What do they connect them with? Well, they connect them, for example, with experts, with mentors, with people that can actually help. So here's the ability for a manager to type in here, to go and search for a particular expert across the organization, type in the skill set for that particular person, add some descriptive information about them. Because what they want to do is to recommend this expert to, in this case, it's going to be Violet Smith associated with this particular skill. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to the skills board and I'm going to show you this in a little bit more detail, Let's do this for Violet Smith. Let's do this for Violet Smith. So we'll just wait for the skills board here to refresh itself. We're going to choose Violet. There we go. Let's choose the skill of being a global sales challenger. Let me just look at what's happening. If I click on skills here, you can see already George has added in here a potential mentor who can help Violet develop this skill. His name is Klaus Brown. He's actually on his team. So George is now recommending a member of the team for Violet, to help Violet develop with this skill. He also has the ability here to add resources. He can upload resources that he thinks might be helpful for Violet. And all of the experts that he's identifying, the resources that he's identifying, all get uploaded into the skill. They get uploaded into the skill. They become part of the skill. He could also recommend some tasks for Violet, specific tasks that he thinks might be important for Violet to consider to help her develop this skill. For example, he's suggesting that she goes and learns a certain some certain content, some certain materials based upon Sales Challenger, and he's assigned this task to Violet. And he's suggesting that Violet works with Klaus. He's uploaded some attachments. There's a start date. There's an end date associated with completing that task. And all of this information becomes associated with the skill. Now, here's the cool part. Because what George can do is he can pick up this skill and he can drag it across and he can place it in Violet's prioritized list of skills. Violet's prioritized list of skills, because obviously with so many skills that potentially we could focus on, what we need to do is to prioritize. And this is George's perspective on the skills that he thinks, based upon his perspective of the work that Violet's doing. This is his perspective on the skills that Violet should start to think about prioritizing. Remember, green skills are the skills whereby you want to invest most of your skilling time. So what he's doing here is he's starting to look at these green skills and he's starting to move them across and place them in Violet's list of prioritized skills that George wants to suggest for Violet. This is the output of the process that we've just been through. And you'll notice on these skills here that it says that these skills are suggested by you, they're suggested by George. And so if I now toggle back to Violet's view, this is Violet's view of her skills board, and I just refresh this view, look what happens. Look what happens. What happens is that those skills that George has identified for Violet, that he is suggesting that Violet focuses on over the next period, now appear right here on Violet's skills board in her prioritized list on the left-hand side there. You see that? And of course, if Violet wants to add skills from her own skills board, if she wants to move some of her own skills, suggested skills across, then she can do that as well. So that she creates a balanced view of skills that she's going to prioritize that come from suggestions from George, her manager, and they also come from her own perspective of those skills that she feels that she should be prioritizing. So we've got a couple of green skills here, and let's move an amber skill across as well, because we also want to invest some time, as we know, in new emerging skills. And she might also want to invest, 20% of her time on some of these skills that she's close to mastering. So we'll bring one of those across as well. And you'll notice what happens when I bring these skills across is that the ordering of the skills is automatically completed for Violet, so she can see, where she stands associated with each one of these skills. Now, you'll notice that Violet has moved across the challenger sales skill here. She's moved that skill across. In actual fact, look, she's already gone purple with that skill, so she doesn't need to have that skill over here in a priority list. So I'll just move that one back. Why would she invest any time on a skill that she's already mastered? That was a mistake. Actually, it was my mistake. So we'll just move that skill back off of the priority list and back onto her skills board. And you'll see how that skill will move back again. And there it goes. Now, let's look at this challenger skill here, this top one. Remember, George had suggested a task for Violet. We click on the tasks. We can see that those suggested tasks appear now in Violet's view of this skill. This is a suggested task that's come from her manager. Also, the mentors, the experts that George has suggested will appear in her view of the skill on the skills board. And also any resources that George has recommended for Violet associated with developing the skill will also appear. All of that information appears within the skill now on Violet's skills board in her list of priorities. And so this is how we help. This is how we help roles. This is how we help roles think about prioritizing their growth goals. Their growth goals in the skills that they want to grow and develop in. This is how we help them prioritize. Because this list becomes the list that Violet is going to use to really prioritize her skilling efforts for the next period. If she's having one-on-ones with her manager, if she's going through connect type reviews, these are the skills that she would focus her development conversation with her manager around, not the skills that are on the right, the skills that are in her list, because these are the prioritized skills. She can see them, George can see them, and so everyone's aligned around the priorities that Violet has. If I click on this challenges skill one more time, I'm just going to go back into it. I just wanted to highlight one other thing here. you'll notice, for example, and I'm just going to use this as an example. When you look at this skill, look at Violet's view of this skill versus George's view of this skill. They both think that this skill is important, but look at frequency. Violet views that she's always doing this. You know, she's doing this particular skill to a high level of frequency, you know, according to the context around which you would expect this skill to be done. She's always doing it. George, on the other hand, views that she's only doing it sometimes. And when you look at proficiency, Violet's view of her proficiency is that she's at the intermediate level. But George's view is that she's really just at the basic level. And you can see there's a difference in what the recommended pace should be. The system, according to Violet's view, says that she should be really sprinting to the finishing line because she's close to mastering it. But George's view is, no, you've still got a way to go. You've really got to start picking up the pace for this skill. And this is important because what tends to happen a lot, especially when roles and managers come together in Connect reviews, is that they spend all of their time in their reviews kind of debating about where they are relative to their development of this skill. They're not aligned around where they are. So this helps a role and it helps a manager prior to a Connect type conversation, a Connect type review type of conversation, before you go into that review, to really get synced up and aligned around where they are. So that the conversation in the review is all about what are the tasks, you know, who can help you? What are the resources that can help you make progress with this skill, developing this skill, looking forwards rather than looking backs and debating about, you know, where you are relative, you know, to your development with this skill. And so there's an opportunity here for Violet to say, you know what, I've listened to what George is telling me about his view on where I am, and I'm just going to sync my view with his view. And when she syncs her view with George's view, you see how the colors change here, and the colors are now aligned. Proficiency view is aligned, frequency is aligned, importance is aligned. We're all aligned on where we are relative to this skill. It's a green skill. We're aligned on it, and it sits in Violet's priority list. Now, you might be wondering, as a result of Violet bringing some of her skills over, what happens in George's view of Violet's priority skills? Let's just go back and take a look at that. Let's go back to George's view. Remember, these are the two skills that he moved across because these are the two suggested skill priorities that he's making for Violet for the next period. If I just refresh George's view of Violet's skill board, let's see what happens here. Let's see what happens. Because what happens is that George's view of Violet's priorities has now been added. What we've done is we've added Violet's view of the priorities that she thinks are important to her. And so George now sees that balanced list of priorities that are made up of not just his view of what Violet's priorities are, but also Violet's view of what she thinks she should be prioritizing. It becomes a combination of both. It becomes a combination of both. And imagine in a kind of remote worker manager type scenario where perhaps people are working on different time zones in different locations, et cetera, the ability to be able to manage these types of coaching related activities, like the prioritization of skills development, like the ability to connect people with experts and make suggestions around resources that might help them. All of these things, all of this now can be done remotely. You don't need to be in the office. You don't need to be sitting beside one another. It can all be done using the application, And that's what you're seeing here on the screen. Now, what I want to do is go back to Violet for a second, because one of the lessons that we've learned over the years is that it's really, really important that there is an authenticity associated with skilling. People need to feel like when they're skilling that nobody's really looking over their shoulder, nobody is scrutinizing what they're doing. that they are free to be themselves. You know, be you and only you. Be you and only you. And so what we do is we give people the ability to make decisions about their data privacy. And we do this through something that we call the safe zone. The safe zone. What the safe zone does is it enables Violet to make decisions about who she wants to share her data with. For example, here she can decide whether or not she wants to share her data with George Beck, her manager. She can decide if she wants to share her data with possible mentors who might be able to help her. She can make that decision. She can share her data anonymously, it's always anonymously, by the way, with support organizations such as Role Excellence, Sales Enablement, Learning and Readiness. She can decide whether or not she wants to share her data anonymously with them. The roles, the employees are always in the driving seat. They're always in the driving seat. And through Safe Zone, we provide them with controls to decide, if you like, what is their level of tolerance pertaining to their data and sharing their data and the privacy associated with their data. Safe Zone enables that. It enables that. And our experience is that Safe Zone really does drive up the authenticity of skilling, you know, across an organization. Now, I also wanted to just touch on the third goal that we had for this application, which is mentoring, which is modeling and mentoring skills that you've mastered. In this case, Violet has mastered for others. And when you click on the little mentoring icon, what pops up is a dialog box that looks like this. Looks like this. And what you're seeing here are those skills that Violet is either close to mastering or has mastered. You see these skills here in the list. There's actually, I believe, 6 skills that she has either mastered or close to mastering. And what she can do is she can decide whether or not she wants to mentor people on her team around these skills, mentor people around her team, on her team with regard to these skills. Or indeed, she might decide that she wants to actually be more ambitious with her mentoring, and actually she's open to mentoring people across the community as a whole. And when she does that, you'll notice for this first skill that people surface. They surface underneath this skill. Klaus has surfaced, Christopher, David, and John. These are all people across her community who are either going green, they're in a position where they need to accelerate their progress, their development of this skill, or they're just starting off with this skill, developing this skill. Like Christopher, for example, look, he's amber with this skill. And so what Violet is actually doing is that she's now going to reach out to Christopher and say to Christopher, hi, you know, I'm Violet, I've mastered this skill, and I'm in a position now to model this skill for you to help you accelerate your development with this skill. And she can provide him, you know, with resources that she's used, that she's found that have been helpful. She can perhaps point out other people that might be very, very helpful to Christopher. She might suggest some activities for Christopher, maybe some stretch goal type activities associated with helping him develop this skill. And so this is really a viral part of the application, because based upon the information that we're receiving on the skills that either people are close to mastering or have mastered, what we can start to do is bring people together. We can bring mentors together with mentees to really enable the mentoring process. And the more mastering of skills that we see across an organization, the more opportunity we've got for those people that have mastered those skills to model those skills for others, so that we can accelerate the pace of adoption of these skills across the organization. And that can have an impact upon the growth of the organization as a whole. So look, I've spent about 30 minutes taking you through our application. I started off by introducing you to these 3 goals that we had with this app. The first was around perspectives. providing the ability for both roles and managers to very uniquely complete perspectives on the work that they're doing based upon an excellence profile. That was the first thing. The second thing was a way for them to then prioritize their growth goals and how a manager could make suggestions around those priorities, how a role could suggest around those priorities, and those two things come together into a list of priorities that the role is going to focus on for the next period of time, and to get super aligned around what those things are, but not just aligned. Also, the ability for a manager to connect their team members with experts, connect their team members with resources that can help accelerate their progress with these prioritized skills. And then the last thing I did was show you the viral nature of the application, how we actually use the data that we're enabling, that we're able to collect around people in role who are mastering skills, to use that information to the benefit of everybody, use that to actually bring together mentors with mentees so that we can accelerate the growth and the adoption of these important skills across the organization. So that's my demonstration of the new skills app from Pipe9. I hope this has been beneficial to you. There will be other videos that we're uploading onto our website and onto our YouTube channel, but thanks so much for watching. If you got to this point of the demonstration, massive thanks for you to hanging on in there and watching all of this presentation, and thank you very much. Bye-bye.